Hi, I'm Maria Theoharis of Sews on social media. Welcome back to Sew 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style. You're listening to the Top 20 Countdown series.
Honestly, all I really wish Instagram would do is bring back chronological posts. I really miss chronological posts. It was so much better then. You could never miss anybody's stuff then.
That's Saremy. She's SewSewLive and was on the podcast in November 2020. Saremy is number 17 in the Top 20 Countdown. While you can find Saremy on Instagram, you'll always find Saremy teaching on YouTube. She's industry trained, and Saremy has a really full commitment to providing teaching content in her sewing school on YouTube. On her Instagram account, she posts what her weekly schedule is. Saremy provides an amazing community space for curious sewists of all abilities, and it's free to join her sewsewguild.com. On Wednesdays, Saremy runs a live stream sewing project from cutting to finish. That's a huge commitment, but so valuable to improve your sewing skills from an industry professional like Saremy. Saremy started her sewing channel in 2018, and interestingly, she's almost hit 2 million views with over 730 videos. Saremy, thank you again for being on Sew Organised Style podcast for Sew 50. Now let's go back and hear how Saremy was building her ability to provide great sewing content to us in the sewing community on her YouTube channel and on Instagram. Our guest has shown us her sewing studio both on her Instagram account and on her YouTube account. It's Saremy, and she's joining us from the States, so let's give her a warm welcome. Hi, Saremy.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's really great that you're here, and I've seen a lot of the work that you do, and you make it so accessible and so fun. So tell us about your Instagram name.
Oh, my Instagram name is SewSewLive, which is also the name of my YouTube channel. And I try and keep things really simple. But I do have other things like patterns under SewSew Patterns. I think my business website is sewsew.live. So it's all about the same. There's a lot of businesses and Instagram handles that start with the word sew. So I know that it's not very unique, but that is why I titled it that. SewSewLive, because I live stream on YouTube.
Can you describe to our listeners where you live?
I live in California. I'm definitely one of those fire-prone areas, and I don't need to, tell you about all the details of that. I'm sure you guys know. The area I live in is very agriculturally rich, so there's almonds, walnuts, lots of stone fruits, olives are grown here, and there's a lot of agriculture surrounding it. Rice is a really big crop here as well. So it's a very hot, dry valley, and we're about an hour and a half north of Sacramento in Chico, which is also a college town, right up like against the Sierra Nevada mountain range.
It sounds like a wonderful area.
It's beautiful. It's very classic California. I like to think of it as definitely like the Western movies you see. That's kind of what the landscape is like. That's a lot of the history when, white people came to this area. There was a lot of gold digging and things like that. This would have been part of that region where gold was being mined or panned.
So let's get on to how you started sewing.
I started sewing very grudgingly in high school. I couldn't get out of the elective that they gave me. I got out of it one year. And the next year I couldn't get out of it. It was the only thing available in that time slot. And I was very petulant about it. I've grown since then. I don't think of it this way, but I was probably 14 years old and I thought it was very girly. I just had this very strange perception about sewing that it was very girly. I was very much a tomboy growing up. And I don't know why I had something against that, but I did. I just didn't want to sew, and I wanted to do other things, but there just weren't other electives that were available in that time slot. I think the first time it was home ec, and then the next time it was just straight up sewing. And I learned that I really like the engineering side of things. That's what I would call it now, is thinking of the garment inside out, how things go together. I really liked thinking about better ways to put the garment together, even though my experience was very limited at that time. I stayed in high school sewing for the rest of my high school years. I probably did that for 3.5 years in high school.
Once you finished high school, what then happened with your sewing?
So after high school, I went into fashion design school. I wanted to learn about pattern drafting. That's really what attracted me to it. I knew that I wasn't probably going to sew for a living, but I definitely found that the engineering, pattern drafting, sizing, all that was just so intriguing to me. I think looking back now, a high school counselor probably today in 2020 would probably say, hey, there's these other fields like engineering you could go into, but they didn't really offer women that in high school. I didn't know there was that option, and so I found it in fashion design. And I really loved that. I focused on the production emphasis of things, but I still did all of the fashion design classes because they didn't have a specific production emphasis degree. So it is a fashion design degree. I was terrible at sketching, but I did love all the pattern drafting, draping, grading, all that stuff. That was very fun and easy. All the prototypes I had to sew for my assignments, that was great. I was just sketching that I really suffered at. I still do. But yeah, so that's when I went into college, and I worked at like a little mom and pop place while I was in college. And I've never not worked somehow in garment industry, sewing industry, the outdoor industry, or anything related to it. I've definitely always found a way to be involved or working in it. There's been a few brief things I've done outside of it, but I was usually sewing personally then if I was, and it was very brief stints that I wasn't in it. So yeah, I've always been here since I was probably 14 years old. There's still so much more to learn and do too.
There is. There's always the technology behind fabrics and how we can use those to do the pieces of work that we love doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Technology has impacted the fabrics that we have available. And after working in the outdoor industry, I can tell you that textile science, it's its own branch. And there was textile science at my college, but it wasn't anything like what you would see for outdoor fabrics and functional fabrics. It's basically a chemical degree. I mean, I think about knits. When knits first came out, I was not, alive, but at the same time, I've seen those knits. They were not what they are today. They've come a long way. You wouldn't even have liked to use them then, but they were revolutionary at the same time. Stretch wovens, where I was around from when that came out, that was pretty amazing. Reflective fabrics, waterproof fabrics, breathable, that coated fabrics. You're talking about all synthetic mostly though. So there's that kind of environmental impact that you have to consider. There are lots of really great pluses with that, especially in conjunction with the medical field. Some of these companies have really developed some things that, I don't know what came first, the medical industry or the fabric industry in some of these cases, but they've definitely directly benefited saving lives. So there's some good things with it too. Can't live without plastics, but it'd be nice if we lived with a lot less of it.
With the sewing that you do, what have been your most treasured makes?
Treasured makes. I'm not very sentimental. I'll just be honest. I'm not very sentimental. The fires in our area, I have to have a go bag. My parents lost their home in a fire almost 2 years ago. My brother did too. I live in one of those areas that, we've evacuated twice in the last couple of months. We've had our power cut 4 times for preventative. And I do think about this. What do I want to grab? And I don't think anything I've sewn is in there. I know that sounds crazy. I didn't make my wedding dress. My friend did. It has been pulled out and it's here at my office, so I don't have to worry about that. It's the only thing probably. So as far as treasured makes, I didn't even make that thing. Well, I have a couple treasured things that are sewn, but they weren't sewn by me. I do have this cat. Oh, they were both made by me. That's true. One of them was, I was 5 years old and I hand stitched a cat face on a piece of burlap at school. Like it was just one of the things they had us do at school. And it's super funky. My mom has had it framed on her wall forever. And a quilt. This is going to be kind of weird, but this fabric store, when I applied for a job there, their entry was they gave you a paper bag, like just this nondescript kind of very faded pastel printed flat bag. And you had to make something with it when you turned in your application. I was new to the town. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a job. And I am so task oriented. It's almost just not funny at all. I was like, okay, I can do this. I was all about having an assignment. And I came back the next day and I said, oh, can I have another bag? And they were like, oh, did you mess up? I said, no, I just need more. And they were like, okay, So I don't know how I did it, because I look at this now and I've been dabbling in quilting and I know how hard it is. I find quilting kind of hard. Even though the paper was very subtly printed in very, very not very different hues, I picked apart all the little colors and I made a quilt that the pieces were tiny, they were like the squares that were pieced were probably less than a ½ inch total. And I made that little quilt an envelope, and I quilted the top of my resume and cover letter, and I slipped it inside and I handed it in. Well, the owner hired me. She wasn't hiring at the time, but she hired me. And she said, I don't usually give these projects back, but I'm giving yours back. And so I think you should keep this. And I gave it to my mom, and she framed that too. When my mom and dad lost their home 2 years ago, they didn't get out with very much. They were ready. They had their go bags. They had all their important papers. They really didn't think they wouldn't be back. And she grabbed those two things. And so they are now hanging in my house. They're actually here at my office because I'm so paranoid. They're off the wall right now since it's fire season. They're here because now I feel very much responsible for these two things. So I made both those things without thinking very much about them, but they are very treasured and they represent a lot to me even more now that my mom saved them. I'm trying not to get emotional because it really shocked me when she showed me. I didn't know for like 6 weeks probably that she had rescued that. She waited until my brother and sister were visiting for the holidays. My brother was here, but my sister was visiting for the holidays, and she sat us all down on the couch. And she said, okay, I have one more gift. We all opened our Christmas gifts over New Year's because my sister was visiting after Christmas. And she said, oh, I have one more gift for you guys, which made me really nervous. When your mom sits you down on the couch side by side, something's going to happen. And she handed me those and I lost it. Like for me, that was hard. The fact that she saved that, it was just hard seeing her. It's hard seeing your parents go through that. That's all I'll say. You all know that. So, yeah, and she said, I do not want those back. Like she didn't want the burden of having them anymore. So I have those now. So
it's making me emotional.
Oh,
just hearing it. It really is. The fact that, your mum had saved those two pieces for you.
I've walked by those two things hung in our house for decades. They've been there. The paper quilt I did in my 20s, was 25. And who knows when I did that cat, I was probably 5 years old, you know? So, and it is pretty goofy. But yeah, she handed me those, and that I haven't cried like that in a long time. For me, it was more that, they say to save the things that mean a lot to you. But I have to tell you, I don't know, I'm not very profound on these kinds of things, but you're going to miss everything. You're going to miss your favorite sweater. You're going to miss those shoes that you finally found your favorite pair of shoes, or that necklace that always went with that blouse. Oh, you don't have that blouse anymore. So the fact that they were two things relating to me and not things that she would get use out of, that's what, hit me hard, because I would have really liked her to have her things. Like we were fine, our house was fine. The fire didn't come near us, so it's just one of those weird things, like it really hits you when someone hands you something like that. So, yeah.
So today is Sew Over 50 Thursday. What's been your experience with the Sew Over 50 community?
I stumbled upon Sew Over 50 about the time I started streaming. I think their account wasn't very old either, because this was a little over 2 years ago. I'm not sure when it started. It felt kind of new at the time. I think Instagram does that, kind of suggests other new folks to you about the same age as your account. I'm 49 now. I'm 49 and a half almost. So I'm not even 50, full disclosure. But it starts kind of bubbling up in my mind like, oh, I'm going to be 50. I'm one of those people that embraces things. Yes, they make me nervous. The stigma of things sometimes makes me a little nervous. How I do everything, I get really nervous about it. So if I barrel ahead at it because I just want to get it over with in a way. And so that was one of the things, like when I saw that it was related to being 50, I was like, well, this is kind of popping up into my head a little bit lately. And the first post I saw was the one on menopause. And the comments were just so honest and funny and heartfelt. I'm not going through menopause, but I really appreciated hearing these women's like truths, and the things they were revealing. And it felt like the most honest comment section I'd ever seen. I really, really liked it. And I really love honesty. I do not think of it as something mean when someone's honest. I don't think of it as something to shy away from. I really like it. I'm a very blunt person, unfortunately. I try not to be, but I am. And I'm very honest. And so I really like that. And that's where I found them. And I've been following them ever since. And I love what they represent for the community. I love the inclusiveness of it and how they encourage people. And I love that everybody on there is an every person. It's not a polished models account, and I like that. I don't really gravitate towards that kind of content anyway. I really like seeing real people, and I love the encouragement and the cheering and all that. So that's my experience so far.
The topics are very organic. That's what I mean by that is what exactly you've said, is that it's real people, real topics, honest conversations, and being supportive.
Yeah, and things that you actually want to talk about and things you actually want to do. And it's grown so big that even if it's not a topic that maybe is for everybody, it's going to touch a lot of people no matter what, because we're all like, there's someone's thinking about it. It's very real that way. So I like that a lot.
They use stories to save particular topics, so you can always find things there if you haven't been watching at the time.
One of the things I love about the So Over 50 account too is how they teach people how to use the technology available to them. I think that is so incredibly useful for anybody. Nobody knows how to do something without learning how to do it first. I really stress that with my own stuff because sometimes people don't want to ask, how do you do that? All the technology topics are saved in their stories. Exactly. That's so great because I've actually gone back and referred to them myself. Like, oh, I've been kind of nervous on how to do this stories thing. And I know So Over 50's done a little post, and I really like that because it makes it less, oh, am I going to be filming myself and are people going to see me right now? But, then I know, oh, that's not going to happen or whatever when I look at those. Those tutorials are great.
Sandy's been instrumental in developing a lot of those technology topics.
Yeah, that's stuff that's so, it's ever changing, and I just feel like, and it's different for each person because of whatever device or computer they're using. And it can just feel a little daunting. That is really great.
And with Instagram changing, they will always put topics about what the changes are as well.
That's great. I noticed there's been another update lately, and there's just more features.
Yes.
There's more and more features. Honestly, all I really wished Instagram would do is bring back chronological posts. I really miss chronological posts. It was so much better then. You could never miss anybody's stuff then, but I liked that.
For anyone who's thinking about following So Over 50, what advice would you give them?
The hashtags. Well, I think what I really like about So Over 50 is they're always featuring different people. And so you're bound to see someone eventually doing something you're interested in or something you like to do, or maybe something you want to learn about. And, you can tap on the screen, look at that person's username and follow them, or look in the comments. But the hashtags are really great. There's a lot of them with Sew Over 50. I'm terrible about looking all of them up.
They always save the hashtags as well in their stories.
Hashtags, I think when I describe how to use those to folks and they realize it, it's like this light bulb, like, oh, this is so great. And it's, as a sewist, you could look up just the hashtag of the garment you're going to be sewing and see it on a multitude of different shapes and sizes and ages of people. And I think that that's immensely helpful. Especially you can read their comments and say, do 3 of them say, I had trouble putting the sleeve on? Maybe something's wrong with the pattern, So Over 50 has a lot of really great specific hashtags devoted to certain topics and challenges. And I think that if you're kind of new to sewing and new to Instagram and you're kind of trying to figure out who to follow or what to do, I would do that. I would look at hashtags or the search function and just see what pops up, because you'll kind of stay in a safe area of sewing related things and probably the genre that you like, and you won't get haired off into a weird direction of stuff you probably don't want to get involved in or exposed to, because there's a lot of crazy stuff out there too.
You're so busy with your live streaming.
I am, but it's fun to join in on those. I've definitely done a couple. It's usually just because I've planned things out already. You know how it is, like if you don't have the stuff for a project, you just can't just drop everything. I don't have a lot of sponsored streams. I'd love to, but when I do, I try and do them when I'm supposed to do them. I really respect that. For November, it is Thanksgiving here in the States, and I think the 3rd week of November. I won't stream that week. I'm doing a sample sale this month as well. The upcoming things I do want to sew in the very near future are, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I want to make a portable litter box for my go bag. And a go bag, for anyone who doesn't know, is just what you grab when you need to be evacuated. I've never done a capsule wardrobe, but I want to do one for my go bag because I hate having to have one of those. And I feel like that would make it more fun. And I want things that don't wrinkle, they're comfortable, that I want to wear. So I'm not just wearing all the dregs of my wardrobe,
Yeah.
And it to be a couple of seasons because it can be really hot here or cold. I do know of 2 sponsored streams coming up, but I can't really say what they are quite yet. I like to make sure it's in my hands just so I don't get anyone's hopes up. But I do think that there's going to be a couple of really great seasonal items there. I think that's pretty much what I have planned right now. I'm already thinking about December because we do a bunch of gift streams, so gift making types of things. I try and find patterns that are free or inexpensive or easy to get. And we make things that are gift oriented for folks who like to sew for the holidays and gift giving. And I'm also going to do one of the, like a week where we finish everything we have unfinished. I know we need more than a week for that. One of my viewers told me, he calls it FFO, Finally Finished Objects. I'm going to do a Finally Finished Objects week. The last 2 months of the year, streams get tight because there's fewer weeks to do it. But then winter starts and we have some winter sewing. And a lot of my viewers, they're all over the world. Some of them, they're living in Sweden and Scotland, and it's cold and snowy and raining. And here it was 80 degrees today and sunny and beautiful. So, and it's fall. So it's hard to take that balance of garments for appealing everybody at where they're at geographically, Yeah,
exactly. It's hard to make a little French jacket in Sydney in February when it's hot and humid. I know exactly what that's all about.
Exactly. That's not going to be the fabric that's on the shelves right now.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I'm going to look that jacket up though.
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of quick how-to videos and uploading them. That's been kind of fun for me. So that's another thing that I'll probably squeeze in. People seem to really like those. They're dedicated to like one little topic. Like I just did one on French seams on inseam pockets and French seaming a set-in sleeve, collar and a collar stand, things like that. So I've been doing like very dedicated, little how-tos on steps that people, they're kind of nervous about. And I really love that kind of sewing. One thing I really want that kind of sewing to be more accessible and people more comfortable with it, because that's the kind of sewing I like to do. And I feel like it's the kind of clothes we like to wear. I love sewing jeans. We're going to sew jeans. That's right. We decided today I'm going to make the Ames jeans by Cashmerette. That's on the ticket probably this month as well.
Saremy, thanks so much for coming on to Sew Organised Style podcast. You've given us a lot of great information about what you do, and it's been really interesting to hear how you've got a go-to bag based on where you live and how you've got to deal with having to evacuate as part of where you live. And thank you also for letting us know how you've enjoyed being part of the Sew Over 50 community.
Thank you so much for having me, Maria. I really appreciate it.
This episode of Sew Over 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style was produced by me, Maria Theoharis, with permission of Saremy, sound by bensound.com. Many thanks for the ongoing support of the podcast Patreon contributors. On patreon.com/Sew Organised Style, you can support this podcast every month for the cost of a coffee. Their ongoing support enables me to develop this podcast for free. You can subscribe to Sew Organised Style podcast, but with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps. Make sure you go back and listen to our free Sew 50 podcast archive on Sew Organised Style podcast. If you would like to contribute to the many ongoing posts and challenges the team promotes on the Sew 50 account on Instagram, direct message Sandy and the editorial team. The Sew 50 community has over 50,000 followers. We look forward to joining you in your sewing room next time. Stay safe, everyone.